So as far as turkeys go, as crazy as it sounds, you will find them up high on a roost. So it's going to be, I'd say 80% of your luck is going to be locating where they roost, because where they roost, let's say up here there's a tall hill that goes up and then it plateaus. Well, if they're roosting up here, you know that you're gonna want to set up down here, because they're gonna, in the morning, they're gonna fly down into those little meadows and start feeding. And you gotta do some scouting. So go early morning. Once you've located them, go super early morning and find out where they're flying down to, because they could be up here, but they could go south and go down and go feed down this side of the mountain, or they could go up north and feed across the street, or wherever you're finding them. Or they could just come straight down the hill. They could flutter down, 100 yards and then start feeding clear the crap down the mountainside. So it's going to be important to find the roost, because then you can get a better idea of where you want to set up your decoys for the early morning hunt. Your setup, just an idea of what I like to do. I've got one hen, and I've got you can call it a Jake if you want. I wanted him to stick out, to look like a Tom. This is actually pants, basketball pants that I cut out and then just pricked into the turkey decoy. And this actually made a heck of a difference when another Tom sees these decoys. And I'll tell you a little story in here in just a minute of how it made a difference. But most decoys, this is a hen who's ready to mate, which also can help your scenario. So for example, these just pull out and stick in, which is super nice. Tunk, put it down, ground level like this. She's ready to mate. And what I like to do is I like to put this one close to the ground, and then this Tom, I like to put maybe 5 yards behind her, or even on the other side of her over here, like so. So it looks like she's ready to mate. He's over here looking at her like he's gonna come in. But I'll put them about 5 to 10 yards apart, so that if another turkey decides to come in after I call him in, he'll just come right up to the hen and won't even worry about this guy. But he's there, he's a threat, and this is why I believe it works out so well. So story time. Actually, we'll wait on the story. My arrow setup, a lot of people think that you have to use a low poundage and that's better for turkey hunting. You can do low poundage. At the end of the day, it's a turkey. You're not trying to take down an elk. You don't need a ton of kinetic energy or poundage to kill a turkey. However, what I have noticed bow hunting turkey is the sheer fact that your choice of shot placement is going to make a world of difference. So you can be 20 yards, you can be 10 yards, you can be out to 40, 50 yards to take a turkey with a bow, whatever you feel comfortable with. I usually set up about 30 yards because I know I'm dead on at 30 yards. And so I set up at 30 yards. I already have my decoys clocked at 30. I set up between the decoys and where I feel those birds are going to come in from. And so it's perfect. They can't see me, and you don't have to hunt out of a blind either. I know a lot of guys are like, oh, you have to go get a ground blind. You have to go get this expensive turkey call. That's not the case. And I'll explain why. But my arrow setup is I use the stock archery arrow. It's a 300 spine, 10.9 GPI. So with 100 grain broadhead on the front, you're looking at about 442 grains per inch at 28 and a half inches long. And then I'm shooting 75 pounds. So as far as location, I might post a couple pictures up here so you can see what I'm referring to, but well, let's just do this. We'll use this. So turkey comes in, right? He's strutting in. A lot of guys like to use the decapitating broadheads, and that's fine. But if you're wanting to mount a bird, maybe your first turkey you want to mount, you're gonna want to use a different type of broadhead. You want to keep the head in contact as good as possible so the taxidermist can taxidermy it in good shape. He needs something to work with, right? He can't sew it back together after you've cut its head off. It doesn't work that way. The skin is very delicate, and the feathers, after you annihilate it with a decapitating broadhead, it's too much to fix. They can't do that. So a lot of the time, if you're using any broadhead, so last year I used a Kudu broadhead. It's a bevel broadhead. There's no bleeders on it. It's a bevel, super thin, and I actually liked using it on turkey. And this is the other thing, rumor has it, people like to use dull broadheads for birds because it helps do some damage on the inside. I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, it can, but I like a nice sharp broadhead, because if you do decide to take a shot right here on his neck, you can nail him right in the neck with a super sharp broadhead, and it's going to do the job. It's going to drop him in the chest, all the way up to its neck. You can hit him with a broadhead, a smaller broadhead. I mean, I think that Kudu broadhead I was using was only maybe an inch width. So when I took a shot at my turkey, it hit him perfectly in the neck, and he just dropped. He sacked. I've watched tons of turkey videos, and I've never seen him drop like he did when I shot him with a bevel broadhead on the frontal of a turkey. You can also shoot them from the back side, because it will go right up through the middle and into its guts, which will take care of the turkey. I don't like going the back end because I think it just jacks up a lot of the meat. I don't know. A turkey, you know what a turkey looks like when you're taking care of it. So if you hit it from the back end, it's not a bad deal, especially if the fin's up and you shoot it right in the butt. That's a good shot because it'll kick out its chest and he'll die. Or if you do a frontal, I prefer aiming for the neck, or that right where the neck ends. There's like a middle piece right here. You can see it. It V's off after the neck. The neck comes down right here where the red stops. Pump one right here in his pump house, and that's all of his guts are right in the front of his diaphragm right there. And that will do the job. This year I'm actually going to use these Ramcats. I know a lot of guys have been using these on elk and deer and everything else they shoot, boar, and they're just all around good broadhead. So I'm actually going to use these this year, and it'll do the job. I know it will, because they're sharp as crap, and I'm using more than enough power. So anyway, long story short, as far as calling goes, I wanted to hit this kind of hard because, like I was saying in the beginning, guys will say, "Oh, you need a slate call," which you have a pen and you scratch, and you can, do little chirps with it and be as realistic as possible. There's also the box calls that sound pretty good. There's no reason why you can't use one of those, or even a mouth call. Lots of guys can't do mouth calls because it's difficult. They can't figure it out, and that's why they have the box calls and the slate calls. So on pressured turkeys, this is where I learned a ton last year turkey hunting, and in a high pressured area. Lots of guys coming in and out, and I'm going and thinking, man, I don't know if I'm up to par on my turkey culling. And this is the thing that I realized is when you're culling turkey, you having a conversation. It's not just throw some scratches and some chirps and some clucks, and you're like doing the language. It's you hear gobbles and you want them to know that you're here. So example, let's play this scenario out that happened with this turkey here. This is a turkey I took in 2019. I didn't get it on film, unfortunately, because the batteries died as soon as this turkey was coming in. So what happened is I hear him, I'm set up on the hill like here. They're nesting up here and then across the valley and some trees up on this hill. So I'm like in the middle of where the turkeys are coming in. So it's ideal, right? So I'm sitting in this little teeny ravine, and then there's another lower ravine with open green grass. And so I hear some gobbling down below. So I figured they come flying in and landed in the field below. And, I hear some gobbling. I'm like, oh, good, I'm getting excited. So my deeks are set out in front of me over here, about 30 yards. I'm back here up against some trees, because I heard them coming from that way. So I hurried and changed my setup as soon as I heard where they were coming from. And so I know they're coming from this way, working their way up the hill. So I let off a couple scratches. So I'm like, and I throw my mouth this way because they can hear where it's coming from. So he's down here gobbling. So I go, and I sit, and he gobbles instantly, respawn, and then he starts gobbling and gobbling. He does 3 to 4 gobbles, and I'm like, man, should I call or should I just sit here? Well, he's sitting there gobbling over and over to get me to respond again so that he knows which direction to come, because he's coming in hot, ready to get some potang. And so I'm like, well, I'll respond since he's not going to stop gobbling. He literally gobbled like 6 to 7 times. And so I let another one out. And I stop. And sure enough, I can hear him, and he gobbles. 3 times. And then I just cut him off, and just like that. And then all of a sudden, he's behind me about, I'd say, 80 yards. And I'm like, what the? One of two things. It could either been another turkey that was hearing me gobble or scratching, right? Or he come running up the hill, got excited, and got a little bit too far behind me. So then I'm like, crap, I gotta start throwing the call this way to bring him to me. So I throw my voice like this, and I let some more out. I pause, and it goes quiet. And I'm like, crap, he's gone. No kidding. Out of the woodwork, right below me, he all of a sudden, he's coming in and he's walking in, and I hear him chirping, and he's like, and I'm like, what the heck? And I can see him. He's probably 50 yards at that point, just off to my right. Again, remind you, I have no ground blind. I'm just up against some trees where he wouldn't be able to see me, but I could see through the brush perfectly fine. And he's looking around. Like, I can see his head, and he's literally doing this. He's looking around. He can't see my decoys, which is right in the open in front of me over here at 30 yards. And so I'm like, man, am I gonna give my position away if I do a couple scratches again? And I'm like, screw it. He's here. He needs to know where my decoys are. So he's a little bit lower than my deeks up here. And he's looking around like, where are you? So I was like, I did it really hard, and I hit it 4 times. So I was like, okay, maybe 5. And then he all of a sudden just looks up, and he sees exactly where my decoys are, because I'm throwing that call straight toward my decoys. So he comes in, he starts getting all puffed up, fans out just like this, and he just comes walking in. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is happening. He comes straight up to my decoy. He comes straight up to this one. And she's all set up like this. And as soon as he sees this guy, he stops. And then he got real big, and he put his feathers up, and he started shaking like, back up, dude, I'm coming in. But I think that deep dark red on the front really irritated him, and he did not like that. He came straight up to this decoy, so she's set up like this, and I set her up just like this, just sideways like this, because as soon as he came to do some poundage, I knew that my goal was to hit it right in the neck. So I'm like, if I can get him facing away from me, and he was on top like this, I knew it would give me enough time to pull back, get comfortable, and pull. So he comes up. What was very strange is he comes up to the decoy. He walks up like this, and he kind of looks at him over there. He's like, what the heck? He looks at her, and he actually pecked on top of the decoy, and he went, what? He stood straight up. And at that point, I was drawn back because there was a bush here. He came around the bush, and I drew back. So I drew back. I was ready to go. And as soon as he got to my decoys, it just stopped. I had the perfect shot on this bird. But as soon as and you got to pay attention, because as soon as he pecked this decoy, he was like, what the? And he kind of sat there for a sec and like did this. He turned and straight looked at me, and I was like, funk, let it fly, and it pecked him straight in the neck, and he just dropped. He just sacked, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it just worked out like that. Literally though, as far as talking to turkeys, you cut off the turkey. If he's sitting there gobbling 3-4 times, freaking let big scratches out, you don't have to be mimicking exactly what they do. He's already looking for the hen to mate. That's the beautiful thing about hunting turkey while they're rutting, is the fact that you can cut him off and let him know where you're at. He's letting you know where he's at. You can throw your call where you want him to come to the decoys. You're setting out the path for this turkey to be in front of you. And as far as overcalling, you can overcall. It's very possible. I've overcalled and they don't necessarily like it. But if they're in the morning time, if there is a turkey that he's just letting out gobbles. He's trying to find out where these hens are so that he can do his thing and plant some babies. So if that's happening, you need to let out your scratches. Go quiet. Don't sit there and chirp and chirp. Sometimes it's not natural, and that's not what they're wanting. They want to know where the female is so that they can come in and do their thing. And if they're in that moment, they don't need that extra chirping and all that. Like if you're trying to get gobbles or responses, yeah, doing some extra noises and stuff, I could see why you do that, but it's not necessary. If you are in the right location, finding where they roost and feed, you can put yourself in the perfect scenario to be able to get your bird with your bow. Comment below if you think this was good. If you have any suggestions, you can also add that in the comments. But like, subscribe, boom, boom, boom. Get yourself a turkey for 2020. Yeah, I know you're gonna do it. It's gonna be sweet, and you're gonna love doing it with a bow rather than a shotgun. Anybody can do this, even if it's your first time out turkey hunting. Get yourself a decoy or two. You don't have to get anything expensive, but if they look good, it helps them, draws them into where your setup is. But yeah, other than that, that's my story about turkeys, and hopefully that helps you for the 2020 season. If you have questions, hit that and I can answer anything that you may have questions about. And the arrow setup that I use, the arrows you can find at www.thestockarchery.com. I'll add that in the link below as well. And thanks guys, take care.